Let's test Sword and Shield. This time it's Zacian LucaMetal up against Baby Blacephalon. Welcome back everyone to more from the SAbleyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're going to be taking a look at Baby Blacephalon being played on the right hand side up against LucaMetal with Zacian on the left. This matchup is a very interesting one. You would think that Baby Blacephalon would have this one in the bag due to type advantage, but obviously Metal Frying Pan is a card that is played by Zacian LucaMetal and definitely will come up, removing that weakness and allowing Zacian LucaMetal to kind of mitigate that threat from Baby Blacephalon. The advantage for Blacephalon, of course, is that it can still take the big one-shots, even though it doesn't have access to weakness in some periods of the game. Looks like Calvin has offered up a couple of mulligans on the right-hand side playing Baby Blacephalon, whilst I have started with LucaMetal and a Zacian. So an attachment there to LucaMetal, and then an Intrepid Sword, and two energy attachments there off of the top is very strong. It's pretty much all that needs, all that the deck needs to do. Calvin has Heat Factory down, and he's going to Quick Ball and discard a Fire Energy, and we'll probably search out a Baby Blacephalon here. You will have to excuse the jittery nature of the footage. It has the footage is a little bit imperfect for us. Hopefully it clears up as we go along, but it shouldn't be too bad. We'll be able to figure out what's going on, I'm sure. There's an attachment to Cramoran, and then a manual retreat into Jirachi. Stellar Wish will find a Fiery Flint, which will help Calvin power up this Blacephalon on the bench. But the question is he going to be able to play a Welder this turn? I don't actually think I saw one in hand. It looks like it's just going to be a pass. Now, my side of the field is looking pretty strong here. As long as I am able to find some sort of supporter. It looks like my hand there is a little bit weak. I've got double Custom Catcher and Marnie here, so it looks like, yeah, I'm just going to play that double Custom Catcher now. I'm going to target down this Cramoran. And then I will play Marnie and shuffle the cards that Calvin needs to be successful to the bottom of the deck. He'll draw 4, I draw 5, and that is perfect for me. Here I've got myself an Energy, there's an Absol, and a Metal Frying Pan. So Zacian will come in, take a knockout on Cramoran here, and now that Jirachi is going to struggle to get out of the active. But on the plus side for Calvin, he was able to find a Welder and 2 energy off of that Marnie, so that's very, very strong. Stellar Wish happening here, and grabs himself a Switch, and he does have access to energy retrieval as well, so he could play that one down, find 2 energy from his discard pile. He's still got access to Heat Factory, so he can burn one of those away, and could potentially see a knockout here if everything goes Calvin's way. You can see there he's got himself a switch into a new Jirachi, so he'll use that Stellar Wish. There's another energy retrieval and another switch there, so he'll grab that energy retrieval. And it looks like that's probably all that he's going to be able to do at this stage, but on the plus side, there's not a huge amount that needs to be done, realistically. That Oricorio is in hand. He might choose to play that down and draw some more cards, actually, which is not a bad idea. In the end, choosing, okay, yes, I am going to replace the Heat Factory. I'll put down the Giant Hearth and then discard a Welder in order to search for 2 fire, and then shuffle them both back in with a Power Pad. That discard of a Welder, obviously not necessarily the most ideal, but depending on the cards that Calvin has in hand, that seems relatively strong. Attaches the Escape Board to Jirachi, which means now a single attachment will be able to get him out of the active. You can see there's a Welder in Calvin's hand there, so he's not super worried about discarding that on the Giant Hearth here. And the question is there anything else to be done? An attachment to Baby Blacephalon seems fair and reasonable, and then it's just going to be a pass over to me, and we'll see whether or not I'm going to be able to do anything with my hand. Obviously, I'm going to be super happy just to find a way to retreat here. So tag call being played, I'll find a LucaMetal, And if I'm lucky, I'll have access to Lana and Mallow as well, so I can retreat for free out of the active. And it looks like that is the card that I have searched for here. So I'll grab that one out, and there's a pretty strong likelihood that that's going to be my supporter for turn, I would imagine. Quick Ball will discard Lucario Melmetal. I've already got one down. Likelihood of me needing more is not particularly high. Although it is concerning that that Lucario Melmetal on the bench has an air balloon attached to it. That means that weakness will not be mitigated by that Baby Blacephalon. If Calvin is able to gust it up, he will only need 3 fire energy to knock me out. Choosing to grab a Rangaroo here, which means that I can put a card from the top of my deck into my hand and then replace it with a card from my hand. And looks like I'm just going for a Professor Magnolia there in order to play 2 supporters in a turn. Oh no, a single supporter. I didn't play the Mallow and Lana. I should have played the Mallow and Lana, but didn't. So, whoops, doesn't matter. And it looks like that is probably going to be all for me, unless I can find a way to switch. Choosing not to Mallow and Lana there might come back to bite me. Probably should have just accepted that and moved on with my life, but saw the extra 7 cards and thought, hey, this could be pretty good. So, a bit of a misplay there, but hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me. Lots of thinking going on here. We have increased the speed of this gameplay to 1.5 times, so you don't have to sit through the entirety of our decision making. It's seeming to be a tough decision that I'm trying to make here. Looks like I've got a couple of cards there. There's a attachment to Lucario Melmetal, which is a reasonable one, and then it looks like I'll just Intrepid Sword and draw 3 more cards. So I'm missing an opportunity to get a prize there. Possibly could come back to bite me. Didn't need to play that particular hand the way I did, but that's okay. It's happened now. It looks like Calvin has a lucky egg attached to that Baby Blacephalon. This is a card that actually makes this deck so much more powerful. Like I mentioned in our deck profile, Baby Blacephalon doesn't like it when your opponent takes a big knockout on a Blacephalon and you need to repower a new one and find energy in hand. So in this particular instance, Baby Blacephalon really enjoys that lucky egg because it means that it can fill its hand back up. Normally it has a pretty low hand size after taking a knockout. Calvin discards Fione here in order to find 2 fire energies from his deck. That could potentially get him within range of a knockout, depending on how many energy he has in hand. Looks like there is 5 there, so a Baby Blacephalon knockout could be on the cards, although there will need to be a switch as well. So playing Pokemon Catcher doesn't get him the switch here, which is a bit unfortunate. I'll go for the Stellar Wish, doesn't find a switch there either. So at this stage, it's unlikely that Calvin is going to get a knockout, which is a shame. He has all the cards that are required to knock out this Zacian, but due to the fact that Jirachi has been stuck in the active by Absol, there's nothing much that he can really do this turn. He'd need to attach once to the Jirachi, but if he does, he doesn't have access to that energy that he needs to get the knockout. So that Stellar Wish would have been great to have found a Fiery Flint or some other fire energy acceleration, but unfortunately wasn't able to get there. And so instead, just attaches to the Baby Blacephalon on the bench and passes the turn. That's fair enough. It's completely reasonable. It means that now a Welder is all that is required to power up a 3rd attacker for Calvin. His board's looking really, really strong here, but now a Great Catcher comes down from my side of the field, discards a Metal and a Professor Magnolia there. This is going to be a big knockout. Knocking out this Oricorio will put me down to 2 prizes, and it's a very, very strong play here. Obviously, Calvin starting with that Cramorant is a problem. There's not another Zacian on the field though, which could kind of be a bit of a problem. One of the things that I don't want to have to do in this game is to utilize the Lucario Melmetal, which has that air balloon attached. If I can get a Pokemon down with a Frying Pan, then I'll feel much better. I haven't used any of the metal patches yet, but there is an attachment with that metal patch. Puts it on the Lucario Melmetal and takes a knockout on that Oricorio. So, kind of accepting here, yes, my Zacian is probably going to get knocked out, but a manual attachment will get myself a knockout from my Lucario Melmetal. And that could potentially be enough to get me across the line. I will need to get a little bit lucky and find some more metal patches in that case. Discarding a switch here, Calvin finds 2 more fire energy, and now his hand is absolutely loaded with them. This is the good thing about Baby Blacephalon, is that it finds so many energy so easily. And a single attachment from the welder means that more energy is kept in hand from Calvin, but that Blacephalon is within range of taking a knockout. So there's 5 fire energy, takes the big knockout on the Zacian there, and takes a couple of prizes. Still going to be a little bit awkward though, because even if Calvin does manage to get a knockout on this Lucario Melmetal, there is still going to be an opportunity for me to win the game, since I am going to go down to 1 prize. I've got the Duskmane Necrozma there on the bench. This is actually a really, really strong card in this exact situation. Calvin obviously about to take 3 prizes on this LucaMetal. I will be able to attach 3 energy and hopefully do 100 or 200, damage to a Pokemon that comes into the active. But I do need to find those metal patches, and the more I can find now, the less I need to find later. Manual attachment obviously already going to the LucaMetal, so I'm not going to be able to mitigate the attachment now. I'll need to find 2 metal patches in order to get that attack off. But as long as I can do that, I'm feeling pretty comfortable, and I've just taken a knockout on one of Calvin's Blacephalon with the second attack from LucaMetal, and bang, there it goes. Calvin will get to draw some extra cards due to that lucky egg, and then he will be able to promote an attacker, depending on the amount of energy that he has in discard, as well as the options he has to retrieve them. It could be Baby Blacephalon, or it could just be the Victini here. Ultimately, in the end, it doesn't really matter which one he chooses, because I'm on 1 prize remaining. It comes down to whether or not I'm able to find the metal patches that I need to win the game. So, Calvin trying to make a decision here, which one is going to be better. Victini, he guarantees the knockout, but Blacephalon might be a little bit harder to knock out. Obviously, if he does get the knockout, but he will go to 1 prize, which will mean Duskmane Necrozma on the bench will be able to get 200 damage off if there are 3 metal energy attached. And see Calvin now. Yeah, he's just decided, no, I'm actually going to go with the Victini here. Victini's probably the safer option, guarantees it, and means that he doesn't necessarily need to find as many cards to get a knockout. He's going to Fiery Flint here. Doesn't look like there's that many energy left in deck, so that could potentially be a big misplay of playing those Fiery Flints now. If Calvin had an extra turn, they could have very easily come up if he were able to play those next turn. But instead, no, just decides, I'm just going to Victini here. I'll shuffle all these energy that are in my discard pile back in, and that's going to be enough to take a knockout on Lucario Melmetal. So, Absol is promoted here. It comes down to whether or not I am able to find all of the energy required to attach to Duskmane Necrozma here. I've got a Quick Ball, I'll discard a Chaotic Swell, thinning as many cards out of my deck here as possible to try and find metal patches. I've only played 1 this game, so I should, in theory, be able to find them. It's just a matter of whether or not I can get through enough cards. I have 8 cards to look at after a Professor Magnolia, and depending on the amount of cards that I can thin, the more likely I will be to be able to find them. There is the Magnolia, so 7 cards here. If I find 2 metal patches, then that will be the game. But at the moment, it doesn't look like I've got them. I can't really see off to the side there. It's a little bit awkward. I'll do my Oranguru here, shuffle things around a little bit. There's a Quick Ball coming down. I'm going to discard a Zacian with that Quick Ball. I'll grab Mew here just to thin out an extra card. There's a bit of an unfortunate situation to not immediately get those patches, because otherwise I could very easily have been able to deal with that particular threat. Now, I've got a head on a Crushing Hammer here, deciding to get rid of an energy off of the Victini. Probably should have got rid of the one on the Blacephalon there, just considering the amount of energy that Calvin would require to take a knockout. There's not a huge amount of cards in deck. I played a switch here. There is one metal patch, but it doesn't look like I've got the second one, which would have been the critical one. I'm going to Intrepid Sword here. No energy attachments, and then that's the turn for me. So Calvin does have an opportunity to win the game here. He flips heads on a Pokemon catcher and decides to bring up the Absol here. So it depends on how many energy he can get into the discard pile. 2 off of a Fiery Flint, was not punished for playing 2 of those last turn, and finds 4 fire energy off of that. Then, obviously, the retreat, and the Blacephalon takes the knockout, and there it goes. There's the game. So the last card in my deck was the metal patch. Unfortunate there for me, but Baby Blacephalon is consistent enough in order to take those prizes when it needs to. Whilst we're shuffling up here, if you like the playmats that we've got on display here on the right hand side, we have our SAbleyes playmat, and on the left we have my personal favourite playmat that I've had made, which is the Arcanine one with the Growlithe there. Those were designed by my wife, who is an exceptional artist, and she can be found on Instagram at AliExeArt, or AliExe_art. If you're interested in taking a look, then feel free. But before I get in trouble for plugging her Instagram, I had better get back to commentating here. We've got our second game, and it looks like I'll be starting with Absol, and Calvin starts with Baby Blacephalon, so that's really, really strong. A quick ball here, discarding a metal energy, means that I'm going to be able to find a Zacian, which is pretty much all that is required on turn 1 for any deck with Zacian. I've got the metal frying pan there, I've got the attachment, and it looks like I've managed to find 1 energy off of Intrepid Sword as well. So I'm going to be ready to attack with this Zacian next turn, and Calvin is going to need to do a bit of work here in order to get himself going. Unlikely to be able to knock out this Absol this turn, although not impossible starting Blacephalon. Absol, very annoying for Jirachi-based builds. We did speak about Baby Blacephalon being a greens-based build potentially in the future, and that is a big hand of energy off of that Stellar Wish. Nothing of interest there, but yeah, greens could be an option. It just depends on how you personally prefer your Baby Blacephalon lists. At the moment, we prefer the Jirachi build just because there's more basics, makes it a little bit easier to kind of find those basics in the early game. Well, it looks like a pretty poor turn for Calvin here. There's going to be a pass, and that's going to mean that I'm going to be able to find a little bit more energy onto my field. I'm going to be able to find a few more extra Pokemon to get myself going. I'm going to quick ball away Mew here in order to find myself a Rangaroo, to give myself access to that extra card, which can come in handy every now and then. Play that one down onto the bench, and then utilize a Rangaroo's ability. Attach to the Zacian, and it looks like I've found Mallow and Lana there to switch, so we're going to be able to attack, and that's a real issue for Calvin now. Not being able to Stellar Wish is going to be real painful, but he does have Oricorio to draw 3 cards. Baby Blacephalon comes down, he's got a Welder for 2. This is looking like a lot better start, although I will say that he's probably not going to be able to find all the cards required in order to get a knockout this turn. A quick ball comes down, he also discards Mew off of that quick ball in order to find himself a Jirachi, which he places gingerly down on the bench. That Jirachi, obviously very important for this particular build of Blacephalon, does not want to lose options for Stellar Wish here. And it looks like he's going to focus that attachment onto the second Blacephalon on the bench. Just knowing that, okay, I can Blazer here. I'm not going to hit the fire energy, but that's okay. I'll Blazer, and then I'm going to at least be closer to another knockout. On my side of the field, it's not looking super amazing here. Looks like I've got access to a switch, but is a switch enough? Probably not. A Mimikyu here, I'll switch into that Mimikyu, and then I'll custom catcher for 2, and hope for the best. Doesn't look like there's a huge amount coming down on my hand though, and that's a pass, which is really unfortunate. Calvin now has an opportunity. If he can flip heads on this custom catcher, which he does, that Pokemon catcher is going to bring out presumably Zacian here, and he could potentially go for a knockout, which would be a massive swing. And look at that, he's going to be able to find multiple energy, but instead goes, no, I'm just going to take a knockout on this Absol. I know that Jirachi is important. I'd much prefer be able to just retreat in and out of that. I'm not going to have the energy this turn to take a knockout on a Zacian, so there's no point half-hitting it. I'd rather just discard 5 and take that knockout. And the way I'm going to do that is by utilizing Jirachi. So discards 2, finds himself a prize, and now Zacian is in the active for me. So I'm going to be able to take a knockout this turn, and Calvin, whether he realizes it or not, might have just saved me a little bit of a problem here. I've actually managed to find Great Catcher, so in this situation I'm going to be able to take a couple of prizes with Zacian, which is incredibly strong. And that card advantage could potentially come up. The big problem for Calvin, though, is now he's lost all of his draw options. That Oricorio is very important, so losing that early is a big problem. He's got himself a fire crystal here, so he'll be able to find up to 3 energy from the discard pile, and that could potentially get him within range of a knockout, but it depends on what he's got in hand. Looks like no. I'm just going to discard a couple and go from there. So goes for 3, 150 down to 120. And I've managed to find a Magnolia here, so my game has started to pick up. There is that air balloon on Oranguru as well. Switch into Oranguru, so now I'm going to be able to attack this Blacephalon again this turn, and this Crushing Hammer could be big. It's a tails. Oh, second one gets a heads, and bang, that's a very important Crushing Hammer, because now I've removed all of the energy from Calvin's board. Playing Tag Call here as well. Going to find Cynthia, Caitlin, and probably Mallow and Lana if I've got another one, just to give myself an option to retreat. If it's not there, I might just grab LucaMetal and see what I can do with it. Looks like it is LucaMetal, so maybe Mallow and Lana in the prizes or already been discarded through Magnolias. Those cards might come up next turn. Obviously, being able to search out Cynthia and Caitlin is important with Tag Call. There's a Metal Frying Pan, and then utilizing Oranguru's ability to put one card on top and draw a card. Zacian comes down. Going to play another Tag Call here. This is obviously just thinning out the deck. I've got access to maybe Guzmahal. There's a Mallow and Lana, so I do grab that one here. And there's no other tag teams that I wish to search out, so I'll just leave it at that. Just thin that card out of the deck. Whether I need it or not next turn is kind of irrelevant, really. As long as I've got some retreat, I should be fine. And there comes Zacian. There's a big knockout. And looks like I've gone down to my last couple of prizes. Blacephalon here finding an energy retrieval off of the Jirachi. That could be important. That could potentially be enough energy to get going, but the big issue for Calvin is there's no energy on the field for him. He doesn't have any of those consistency cards back. He needs to find a welder out of his hand, or at least some way to draw cards, and that Heat Factory is very important. Unfortunately, doesn't find any of the cards that he needs to start powering up an attacker. He can at least manually attach, so that will go down to the Blacephalon, but he might just need to accept that this Jirachi is on its way out, and if he's unable to get himself another attachment over the next turn or two, then there's a good chance that I'll run away with the game. There's the pass, so on to me, as long as I've got a switch, and I do with that Mallow and Lana, so I'll heal all of the damage from Zacian and retreat it to the bench, put Oranguru into the active. Now that Zacian has become a massive threat to Calvin, if he is unable to get a knockout on it next turn, then this game is probably over, considering I can just retreat and attack for my last couple of prizes. Taking the second to last prize there. Calvin's got, it looks like, an extra Blacephalon in hand. He's got access to Fire Crystal, which is pretty strong. He's going to find those energy. He needs to find a welder, though, and didn't get it off of the Heat Factory, so he will scoop it up. And we're looking at a third game here between these two decks. Like I said, it is possible that Blacephalon does just clunk up a little bit, and Zacian has enough bulk that even though Blacephalon has the weakness, it is able to steal games here or there. We'll go into the third game, and hopefully you've seen just exactly how this matchup can play out. It is reasonably even. I would obviously favour Blacephalon because there is that chance to just take one big prize due to a lack of the metal frying pan, but definitely not unwinnable for LucaMetal here. Alright, looks like Calvin again has started a GX or V Pokemon, something that's a little bit unfortunate. He's got Oricorio in the active there. I've got myself a basic as well. And I think it is, yep, that's a LucaMetal, no worries. So a decent start for me, not a good one for Calvin, but he does find the Jirachi off the top, so he's going to be able to find some extra cards here. And going first is so important that you really do need to make the right decisions in the early game when you're going first. You don't have the luxury of being able to play a supporter, so it is very important. He's going to grab out Giant Hearth here. Whether or not he plays it this turn is another question. He could hold on to it, but obviously I do play Chaotic Swell, so he could get the value out of it now. There's a Zacian. He's going to play that Giant Hearth, discard a Fire Energy to search for 2 more. And that Zacian's a really, really strong inclusion, actually. He's going to be able to draw 3 cards here on his first turn, even though he doesn't have any chance of finding Metal Energy. He's just going to be able to get that extra draw, which he might need to find an attack. So now I'm going to be in the same kind of boat. I'm going to be looking for a Zacian of my own. This LucaMetal in the active is a little bit vulnerable going second. I'm going to want to put a Metal Frying Pan on there if I can. I'll grab Cynthia and Caitlin, as well as Mallow and Lana. I know I'm going to need to retreat that. And looking at Calvin's hand, the only thing he's really missing is a Blacephalon. If he gets a little bit lucky here, there's a good chance he could just win the game straight away. Cynthia and Caitlin would discard Mimikyu. And it looks like the Chaotic Swell is going down. But there's not a lot else happening on my side of the board. Maybe that Mimikyu shouldn't have been the card to discard with Cynthia Caitlin. Because, yeah, it looks like, yeah, that's my turn is over. So if Calvin is able to find a Blacephalon here, he's going to have everything that he needs in hand already to get a knockout and win the game. So this Fiery Flint thinning out some fire energy. Doing the right things here, making sure that he's got the best chance to find either a quick ball off of Jirachi or some other way of finding a Blacephalon. He's got everything that is required. And there's the Stellar Wish and a quick ball off of the last card. Oh, that's really amazing. Finds the quick ball, discards the Mew, which is a common theme that I'm seeing, discarding Mew. Finds the Blacephalon. He's got more than enough energy in hand here. Just needs to attach one. He's got the escape board on the active. He's gonna Fire Crystal here as well, just to grab some more energy, just to really show off how much damage he's gonna do. Hopefully he can find some more off of this welder. That hand is almost entirely fire energy, just by the way. That's an insane amount of fire energy. He's styling here, plays the challenge amulet down on the Oricorio, attaches, retreats, and then is able to get the knockout with Blacephalon. Let's just see how much damage he's doing here. That's a lot. That's like 600 damage. And I've been punished there for choosing to discard the Mimikyu. But, I mean, my hand wasn't super strong. It was going to be a difficult game anyway. Thanks to Calvin for testing this one with us. And, yeah, it seems to be a pretty interesting matchup. There you have it. Despite my best efforts, Baby Blacephalon got across the line against Zacian LucaMetal. It's surprising how close the matchup actually is, but when you factor in Metal Frying Pan and that GX tack from Lucario Melmetal, then suddenly the game gets a lot closer. I wasn't able to show off the full power of Zacian Melmetal in this one, but Calvin definitely showed off how good Baby Blacephalon can be in winning a matchup that you would think would be quite easy, but in the end turned out to be a little bit more difficult. Anyway, if you like the content from us here at the SAbleyes and you want to see more, then consider subscribing. You click the little button that's up here to subscribe. Over on this side are some videos that you might like, and down here is a bit of a playlist for you to watch some more of our Sword and Shield testing. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at the SAbleyes_YT, and otherwise we'll see you all next time for more from the SAbleyes. Bye.